A plane traveling over the sea suddenly malfunctioned. The door of the restroom burst open in an instant. The pilot quickly pulled him back to his seat. They had to prepare for landing on the sea. Immediately after, the pilot handed him a life raft and told him to fasten his seatbelt and not move around. The plane rapidly descended with only 3 kilometers left until it reached the sea surface. And then he noticed that he had dropped the pocket watch his girlfriend had given him. The pilot told him to put on a life jacket, but it was on his right side while the pocket watch was on his left. He unfastened his seatbelt and chose the pocket watch. After retrieving the pocket watch, he wanted to grab the life jacket, but the plane shifted, making it difficult for him to move. The pilot noticed that he was not in his seat and immediately unfastened his seatbelt. The unexpected turbulence severely injured the pilot. With the cooperation of the captain and co-pilot, the plane made contact with the sea surface as smoothly as possible. As soon as it made contact, seawater rushed into the cabin. Chuck, who hadn't fastened his seatbelt, luckily escaped. Suddenly, the fuselage of the plane broke apart and disintegrated, and seawater began to pour in. He opened the inflatable life raft and the buoyancy dragged him upwards. However, some parts of life raft got stuck underneath. The sinking plane dragged the life raft as if trying to pull them both down to the bottom of the sea. But Chuck was extremely lucky. The connecting rope suddenly broke and the life raft dragged him to safety. Chuck was pulled to the sea surface by the life raft and used all his strength to climb on board, tightly grasping the edge of the raft. However, inch by inch, he drifted towards the still-running engine. Sensing the danger behind him, he immediately turned his head. The engine caught fire and exploded, throwing Chuck back into the sea. The burning plane was like a roaring deep-sea monster sinking slowly back into the ocean. But the crisis was not over yet. Chuck had to endure wave after wave of towering waves, and he could only tightly hold onto the rope of the life raft. It was like this for an unknown amount of time until suddenly the life raft deflated. Sharp rocks pierced through it, meaning he had finally reached the shore. Using his last bit of strength, he dragged the deflated life raft to the shore. When the sunlight fell on his face, Chuck finally regained consciousness. He picked up the package that had been washed ashore with him and searched for traces of human presence on this deserted island.
Anybody!
It was only then that he realized he was stuck on a deserted island. Chuck wrote help in the sand on the beach, hoping that a passing plane would see it. He then waited for rescue in the same spot until the sun set. Here, away from the hustle and bustle, everything looked peaceful except for the low roar of the waves. But for Chuck, it was eerily quiet. Suddenly, a noise came from behind him in the darkness. The sounds made him extremely alert, but Chuck didn't dare to act rashly and could only hide in the life raft. The next day, he found that the help he had written was almost completely washed away by the seawater. He turned around and used a fallen tree branch to remake it. The packages from the plane continued to wash ashore one after another. Just then, the noise from the previous night reappeared. Chuck was scared.
What is that?
But there was no response from the source. Any unknown sound on this deserted island would make people nervous. Was it a person or a dangerous wild beast? Chuck still didn't dare to act recklessly. He returned to the camp to organize his packages. Suddenly, that sound appeared again. Could it be that the people of the cannibal tribe were preparing to attack him? Suddenly, it turned out to be just a ripe coconut. Chuck collected all the fallen coconuts, but the tough shell made it difficult for him to open them. No matter how much he knocked or smashed, he couldn't break through. But soon he came up with a solution. Chuck used a sharp stone to peel off the outer skin, then used a pointed stone to drill a small hole. In this way, he finally drank the sweet coconut water. In the afternoon, he began to explore other parts of the island. Chuck discovered a cave, but he didn't rush in, because next he needed to go to the highest point here. The sharp stones made it difficult for him to walk. He cut a piece of fabric and padded it with leaves in his socks. He tied the fabric to his feet with a rope, making a pair of makeshift shoes. With his feet protected, Chuck was able to climb to the top of the mountain. This was a lonely little island. Only the waves were willing to bring greetings. But the pilot floating in the distance brought him a glimmer of hope. Chuck hurriedly went down the mountain to the beach, flipped the pilot over, only to find that he had no signs of life. Chuck dragged him to the shore. The flashlight he carried with him still worked. Although the pilot's shoes were a bit small, it was better than having nothing. He took out his wallet, remembering the name of this deceased person. There was also a family photo in the wallet. Then Chuck buried him, keeping the photo by his side and marking his name, date of birth, and death. It must be said that Chuck was quite handy. His only spiritual support was his girlfriend. Before they parted, Chuck gave her a gift, which was an engagement ring. He wanted his girlfriend to open it on New Year's Eve, and Chuck promised to return on New Year's Eve. Little did he know that this goodbye would become eternal. The morning dew every day was the most precious treasure to him, because it was the only source of fresh water on the deserted island. Chuck tried to fish to improve his food, but without any fishing experience, he often returned empty-handed. At night, when he slept at the beach, he accidentally saw lights flickering in the distance. He immediately took out his flashlight to get their attention.
Yes! No! Yes!
Chuck received no response. He packed up his things and prepared to approach proactively. That faint flickering light was hope. Chuck got on the half-deflated life raft and headed towards hope. He went through wave after wave of sea waves, only to be greeted by larger and larger waves. Chuck tried his best. However, he ultimately failed, and something even more dangerous happened. Chuck's left leg was cut open by corals, and he could only drag the deflated life raft back to the shore. But as one wave subsided, another rose up. The heavy rain poured down. Chuck quickly covered the packages and turned to the cave he had found before. Luckily, he found a small pond there. Chuck went forward to confirm if it was drinkable, but exhausted, he fell asleep. He made a huge mistake. He forgot to turn off the flashlight, and just like the flashlight, his hope of leaving the island is fading. The next day, he returned to the shore and looked at the pile of packages. Since he couldn't deliver them, he might as well open them and see if there was anything he could use. Inside the first one were some videotapes. The second one contained a divorce agreement. Next was a volleyball given as a birthday gift, and then a leopard print skirt for ladies. The most useful item was the pair of ice skates. When he was about to open the last package, Chuck hesitated. The package had the words "The World on Time" written on it, a principle he had always adhered to as a logistics manager. The wings on the package were unlike anything he had seen on any other delivery box. In the end, he decided to keep the package. He was determined to deliver it to its rightful owner.